enamorado.
It's you again. Welcome back. Learning to draw is a lot of fun, but it can be pretty daunting at first. Like, where do you even start? How do you make sure you're not wasting your time practicing useless stuff? Well, don't worry anymore. Because over the next 30 days, I'll show you step by step, tempted to do that, and possibly fail. Then you'll be ready to move on to day one. So for the first day of the challenge, we'll start real slow and easy. The goal will be to start by drawing a square freehand, as symmetrical as you can make it, split it in quarters, and use those intersections as guides to draw a circle perfectly snug inside. And real quick before we move on to day two, the idea with these exercises is to do one every single day. Like powering through multiple ones in one day is not really gonna help you much. Your brain needs the time to let things marinate properly. If you're quick, I would rather do the same exercise multiple times a day, if you want the extra practice. But yeah, the idea is that you should be able to do most of these exercises in like 10 to 15 minutes a day, or less if you have more experience. But don't hesitate to take longer if needed. Split it in quarters and use those intersections as guides to draw a circle perfectly snug inside. And real quick before we move on to day two, the idea with these exercises is to do one every single day. Like powering through multiple ones in one day is not really gonna help you much. Your brain needs the time to let things marinate properly. If you're quick, I would rather do the same exercise multiple times a day, if you want the extra practice. But yeah, the idea is that you should be able to do most of these exercises in like 10 to 15 minutes a day, or less if you have more experience. But don't hesitate to take longer if needed, especially if you haven't really drawn much before. Anyway, for day two, you'll just need to draw 3 random shapes like these, and then give them varying thickness by drawing the same shapes but slightly offset, and joining any corners with lines all parallel to each other. On day 3, this time you'll draw 3 cylinders, each partially behind the other, and getting smaller to give the impression that they're in perspective. Then cut them in half horizontally. The trick is to start with 2 identical ellipses, and joining any corners with lines all parallel to each other. On day 3, this time you'll draw 3 cylinders, each partially behind the other, and getting smaller to give the impression that they're in perspective. Then cut them in half horizontally. The trick is to start with 2 identical ellipses, close the shape, and then erase either the top or the bottom line. The line splitting the cylinders in half should match it, or it won't look. The following day, you'll practice more cylinders because it's one of the most important shapes to master. This time drawing 3 of them in different sizes and heights. And adding a bit of shading by drawing lines that increase in frequency as you get closer to the edge of the
You'll also cut the cylinders in half vertically, and you can tell it's cut in half properly when the two sides on top here are symmetrical but inverted. Now on you'll need to draw 3 different boxes with flat perspective, meaning all the edges representing depth should be parallel. And then you'll draw 3 more, but instead of keeping all edges parallel to each other like in the first 3, have the outside edges converge slightly so that if you continue those lines, they would eventually intersect. This gives it a more natural look because it's slightly foreshortened. And this results with the faces in the back of the box being slightly smaller. It's a better drawn box. On day 6, you'll draw 9 boxes like the foreshortened ones we did on day 5, as seen from every angle. Obviously, a lot of these will look the same, just mirrored, but now you can say you know how to draw in perspective, even though it's pretty basic stuff. Kinda cool, right? You can also make the smaller faces darker to make them feel even more 3D. Day 7 is circle drawing day. Oh dear god. You'll need to fill in the whole space with circles, but wait. Don't panic yet. There's a trick to drawing nice circles with a single stroke. Let's bring in some help. If you're like most artists, you're probably used to using your wrists when drawing. And this can work great for smaller details. Drawing circles or any kind of motion. You want to use your elbow and shoulder instead. Lift your palm from the canvas or from your sheet of paper so that barely any weight rests on your hand, and focus on the motion started by your shoulder and your elbow instead. It takes a little bit getting used to, but this is the way to draw the perfect circle in one stroke very quickly. The next day, you'll draw a few ribbons, similar to day 2 in a way, but harder. For day 9, the challenge will be to draw 2 identical eyeballs looking in the same direction, and remember the circle drawing method that I showed you. And then on day 10, already 1/3 of the way complete, you'll need to draw a sphere, a cylinder, and a box, and then you'll draw just half of each of those, as if you cut them down the center with a knife. Day 11's challenge will be to draw a sphere, cut it in half horizontally, and use that same resulting ellipse shape to draw its shadow on the ground, as if there was a directional light source directly above it. Notice how I'm just adding the shadow below the halfway line, where the light can't reach. Now moving on to day 12, draw a pile of boxes and a pile of cylinders, and add a bit of shading. The next day you'll need to draw 3 cylinders with varying levels of bend. As usual with cylinders, it's easier to draw the extremities first and then connect them. For day 14, draw 2 to 3 boxes of different shapes and chop off some of their sides, essentially starting from a simple volume and constructing something more complex out of it. You'll see this construction method a lot moving forward. It's an overpowered skill to develop as an artist. Now on day 15, you'll draw a simplified burger with 2 half spheres and a cylinder for the patty. The trick here again is to start from a bigger sphere. Draw ellipses where you're going to cut it and then erase what you don't need. And we can straighten the edges of the piece in the center to turn it into a cylinder, essentially shaving off the excess. And we're already halfway through the challenge. The progression in the exercises and when we introduced new notions took a lot of time to put together. Everything is calculated, so hopefully by now a lot of things have started to click, especially if you've been at this for 2 weeks. You'll see when you try it. And if you're one of the nearly 30,000 students part of my art school program, I'm sure this feels familiar because it's heavily inspired by the structure at the beginning of the program. But if you're not a student and you'd like to also develop all the skills you would possibly need to be able to draw anything your mind can imagine, click the link in the video description to learn all about my complete art education program, Art School for Digital Artists. You'll even be able to get it at a massive discount for the next couple of days, but this sale is ending soon. Check the description. This time you'll start with a box and bevel or round out its edges before cutting a hole through it. And the depth of the hole should of course be the same depth as the box itself. Not longer nor shorter because that would make no sense. On day 17, this time you'll draw 3 different bowls, one based off of a cube, another from a sphere, and the last one from a cylinder, and then try to make them as symmetrical as possible and carve out some simple details into them. It's not easy, but the drawings are starting to look like something now. So on day 18, you'll draw a totem, starting from a simple tall box, and then extruding some of its faces straight out. Notice I'm keeping all my lines parallel, just using the perspective lines from the box that I started with. On to day day 19 then. You'll draw a box and a cylinder rotating in space, seen from different angles. Notice how one side we could barely see at first becomes the front-facing face? And if this is too hard to imagine, don't hesitate to use an actual box and a paper towel roll as references. Moving on to day 20. The goal now will be to draw a rudimentary house or a garage maybe, starting from a simple box, extruding faces to add detail, and carving an opening leading into it. And as we roll into the final 10 days of the challenge, you'll draw a cup of coffee with a beveled bottom, a handle, and a floating marshmallow, or an ice cube. And now I feel like having coffee. On day 22, we're finally introducing real constructed perspective. You'll draw 3 different boxes in 1 point perspective, and then cut them in 2 or more equal pieces. So you start with the horizon line, then you place a vanishing point on the same line, draw the first face of the box, and connect those corners to the vanishing point. Notice the lines giving those boxes their height and their width are always perfectly vertical and perfectly horizontal. It's only the lines giving the boxes their depth that will all be converging towards a vanishing point. And to find the center of any of those faces, draw lines across opposite corners and X marks the spot. This stuff might be a bit overwhelming if you've never tried it before, but it gets pretty easy after just a couple of tries. Don't give up. Next is day 23 and you're nearly at the end. This time you'll draw another box in 1 point perspective, again starting with the horizon and our single vanishing point in the center of the canvas, except we'll draw the edges coming towards us and beyond the canvas, giving us the impression we're in a room now. Using the same vanishing point, draw rectangles on the side walls to represent a window and a door, and another for the carpet on the floor. And if you feel fancy, you can find the center of it, use the intersections here as guidelines to draw a circle in perspective. Then erase those guidelines, and now you have a round carpet instead. Wow. On day 24, we'll use 1 point perspective again, but this time place the vanishing point on the side more, because you'll be drawing a series of identical buildings. It's hard to eyeball distances in perspective, but we can easily calculate them instead. If I want to make sure that all my houses are exactly the same width, I can find the center of the first one here and draw a vanishing line going through that new middle point. Now, starting from the corner here, I can go through the intersection created here, and as soon as I touch the bottom vanishing line, I know that's going to be the width of the second house, identical to the first. You can just repeat the same thing to draw the third house, and then reuse that trick to find the center of a face to draw identical doors on each house. A little trick here. On day 25, start by drawing 2 horizontal lines to represent a canyon, over which you'll need to draw a covered bridge with a pointy roof, like a simple one. Starting from a large box, you'll just have to carve out the details like we've done in the previous days, and maybe you can even add evenly spaced windows or details using the trick from the previous day, if you're up for it. For day 26 of the challenge, we're finally moving on to 2 point perspective. Oh snap! The goal here will be to draw a treasure chest in 2 point perspective. If the idea of drawing a chest just starts to make you panic, you can just draw a simple box instead, no worries. Now, same as with 1 point perspective, we start with the horizon line, the first and second vanishing points placed on the horizon, and now the height of the box will still always be a perfectly vertical line. Nothing changes from 1 point perspective yet, except now the lines giving the box its width will be converging to the first vanishing point, while the lines representing the depth of the box will be going towards the second vanishing point. Just a little more complicated, but really not that much. And you can then bevel the edges to give it a rounded top. On day 27, you'll draw a pole with a hanging sign in 2 point perspective. Start with the pole, constructing it the same way as the chest from the previous day, and then using the same vanishing lines, draw a small cylinder sticking out of the center of it, and a simple square surface to act as the sign. For day 28, you'll draw simple 3D glasses starting from a box, using all the tricks we've seen so far to go from a basic primitive to a much more complex item. To be on the safe side, make your box pretty shallow, otherwise your lens might look a little too tall. And no need to worry about vanishing points this time, we're done with that. Now for day 29, you'll draw a toilet, starting from another box. This will require all the construction tricks you've learned in the past 28 days, including carving out or extruding parts of the box, finding the center of faces, and drawing curves in perspective. To make it fancier, we can also make the base a bit more narrow, and then join those lines and erase the rest. Mine's got no seat and cover, but don't hesitate to add that if you want the extra challenge. And then finally, here we are, the final day of the challenge. Time to see how much better you got, because you'll be redrawing the skull you started with. If you think in simple volumes first, blocking it out or constructing it with boxes, cylinders, and spheres like we've done so far, and like carving out the details, the process becomes a lot easier. And this is what's called construction in art, and it's a very important art fundamental that should allow you to draw almost anything. So if you've made it so far in the video, now it's your turn. These exercises should give you a fantastic foundation as artists, and hopefully it makes a lot of things click for you. And since it's more fun and more motivating to do this with others, if you try the challenge, I would highly recommend you post it online using the hashtag LearnToDraw in 30 days, so we'll all be able to see each other's progress.